the fall of 1983, Elridge was the kind of place where folks left their doors unlocked and knew every car that drove down Main Street after dark. Mara and her husband, Daniel Eastwood, lived on the edge of town in a modest white farmhouse surrounded by open fields and thick woods. Their marriage, as far as neighbors could tell, was ordinary. Quiet dinners, weekend barbecues, nothing dramatic enough to raise suspicions. That night, a cold October wind passed through the trees when Daniel told Mara he needed a little air and was just taking the Bic for a spin. She remembered the way his voice cracked, like something was weighing on him, but she couldn't quite place what. Hours later, when Daniel still hadn't returned, Mara called the sheriff's office, and deputies drove the same loop Daniel usually took. No car. No sign. Nothing. At first, authorities suggested maybe he'd driven to Cleveland, maybe to visit relatives, maybe stress from work pushed him to take off. Men did that sometimes. That's what they told Mara. But she knew her husband. She knew how he held her hand when storms rolled in, how he checked the locks every night, how he never left without a note. Something was wrong, and deep down, she felt it instantly. When Daniel's book was found 3 days later on the outskirts of an overgrown logging road, the scene made even less sense. Driver's door open, keys hanging in the ignition, headlights off, like he'd stepped out for just a moment. Mud prints were everywhere, but oddly, none matched Daniel's shoes. A detail police almost brushed aside. There was no wallet, no blood, no sign of a struggle, no sign of a man simply deciding to vanish. And as investigators began packing up, Mara stood behind the police tape, watching their flashlights fade into the woods, thinking one thing she could never say out loud. Something out there took him. During the winter of '85, 2 years after Daniel vanished, Mara began receiving phone calls around 2:00 in the morning. Always the same time. Always the same chilling sound on the other end. At first, it was just static, like an old radio station half out of frequency. But something about the way it pulsed felt intentional, as if someone was adjusting a dial in real time. She'd whisper, "Hello," again and again. But there was never a response, until one night she thought she heard faint breathing. Slow, uneven. Like whoever was listening didn't want her to know they were there. She reported the calls, but without a voice and without a number that showed up. Authorities told her there wasn't much they could do. By '89, the calls had evolved. Sometimes Mara would answer and hear a man inhale sharply, as if about to speak, but instead the line would cut instantly, almost like someone was forcing him to hang up. Twice she heard distant echoing noises, like metal scraping or footsteps on concrete, the kind of sounds that didn't belong to a phone line at all. Once, she swore she heard wind, heavy wind, like someone was standing outside late at night with the receiver held up to the open sky. She couldn't explain why, but she felt Daniel in those silent moments, as if he was somehow trying to break through whatever barrier held him. And then came the night in 1990. The phone rang at exactly 2:03 a.m., and when she picked up, a hushed, trembling voice whispered her name, Mara, as if it hadn't been spoken in years. She froze. Daniel always said her name a particular way, soft on the second syllable, and this voice sounded exactly like his. But there was something warped about it, like pain had reshaped him. Before she could speak, he whispered one more sentence, "I'm sorry." And then the call cut to dead silence. She kept the receiver to her ear for nearly an hour, listening to a dial tone that felt colder than any winter outside her window. In early September of 1995, Mara found a plain brown envelope lying flat against her front door. No postage, no address, no writing. Like someone had walked right up to the porch in the middle of the night and placed it there. Her neighborhood had changed a lot since the 80s. Most families had moved out, and the streetlights flickered more than they worked. So the idea of someone being close enough to leave something without being seen sent a chill down her spine. Her first thought was that maybe the police were returning old evidence, maybe another cold case review. But the moment she held it, she knew it wasn't official. The envelope was dusty, almost like it had been stored somewhere forgotten for years. Inside was a single cassette tape, old and worn. The transparent window scratched, the label faded except for 5 handwritten words in dark ink. Plame, Mare. What struck her wasn't just the message, but the handwriting. It looked rushed, uneven, like someone was writing while shaking. For several minutes, she just stared at it, sitting alone at her kitchen table, remembering the nights when Daniel used to record songs off the radio for her on blank tapes. She wondered if this was one of those old tapes resurfacing from a box she misplaced years ago. But something in her gut told her she had never seen this cassette in her life. That thought alone made her fingers tremble. When she finally pushed the tape into her old cassette deck, there was a burst of static, long broken, like something had been recorded over dozens of times. And then she heard it. Daniel's voice, weak, breathless, sounding like he was whispering in a dark room with someone just inches behind him. He spoke quickly, telling her he had discovered something near the old sawmill, something hidden beneath the ground, something he should have never found. The tape crackled violently, as if someone slammed a hand over the microphone. And then came a sudden high-pitched scream, a sound she had never heard from her husband. Not fear of pain, but fear of someone or something. The recording ended with a sharp thud, like the recorder hitting concrete, and a final sound that made Mara's blood turn cold. The faint echo of footsteps approaching the microphone. After listening to the tape more than 30 times, Mara realized she couldn't just sit in her house, waiting for another message. She needed answers, even if it meant digging into a part of her past she'd tried so hard to leave behind. So, late one evening, she packed a flashlight, a small recorder, and Daniel's old flannel jacket, something that still smelled faintly of pine and winter. The drive from Cleveland back to Elridge felt unreal, like she was traveling backward through time. Every mile closer, the trees grew thicker, the roads narrower, and the radio signals weaker until static filled her car. Just like the tapes, it felt almost intentional, like the place itself didn't want her coming back. Elridge looked older, darker, and strangely abandoned. The sawmill's rusted metal siding was covered with vines and broken windows. Many locals claimed the place was haunted long before Daniel disappeared. But Mara had never believed stories like that, not until now. She parked near the old loading dock and stepped out into the cold air, feeling a strange heaviness, like the woods were watching. The silence was suffocating. Even the crickets seemed to avoid this place. Using only her flashlight, she searched the outer woods until she noticed something odd. Large boards laid across the ground in a grid pattern, worn down over time, nearly hidden beneath dead leaves. When she pushed the rotting boards aside, she found a trapdoor, its metal handle rusted, as if untouched for decades. But that didn't make sense. Daniel's voice on the cassette was anxious, panic it recent. Someone had been down there, and not that long ago. Swallowing fear, she grabbed the handle and lifted. The hinges groaned like something waking up. A cold draft breathed up from the darkness below, carrying the smell of damp earth and old machinery. With every step down the narrow staircase, the air felt thicker, and her flashlight began to flicker. She didn't know what she expected to find at the bottom, but she knew Daniel's voice was leading her directly into it. At the bottom of the stairs, Mara found herself standing in what looked like an underground storage chamber. Wide enough for machinery, tall enough for a person to stand upright, but built from concrete walls that didn't match the time period of the sawmill above. Dust covered everything except one thing placed directly in the center of the room, an old wooden chair with leather restraints fastened across the armrests, like whoever sat there wasn't meant to leave voluntarily. Beside it, half buried under dirt and rust shavings, lay another cassette recorder, older than the first one, the kind factory workers might have used in the 1970s. Someone wanted her to find this room, and whoever it was had planned it for a very long time. When she pressed play, a harsh screech echoed through the chamber, followed by Daniel's trembling voice. His breathing was frantic, like he was terrified the moment he began speaking. He told her he'd been taken here after following a set of tire tracks near the sawmill back in 1983, that he found something buried beneath the old floor beams, something he wasn't supposed to see. His voice cracked as he whispered her name again and again, apologizing for leaving, insisting he never wanted to. Then he said something that made Mara's knees weaken. "Mara, I didn't leave you. I was kept here." Before she could react, the tape erupted into banging sounds, metallic sharp, like someone was swinging something against the walls. Daniel's voice suddenly dropped into a whisper, shaky and close to tears. "If you're hearing this, Mara, it means they're coming back." He paused, breathing shallow and uneven, as if someone was standing inches away from him. And then, faintly, footsteps approached from behind the recorder. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Daniel's voice broke mid-sentence, like someone had grabbed him, dragging him away from the microphone while he struggled to speak. The tape cut sharply, ending not with silence, but with a final sound, so faint she replayed it several times. What she believed was the whisper of a second voice, colder, older, and nothing like Daniel's, saying only her name. When investigators finally entered the underground chamber, they didn't find any cassette recorders, no old chair, no restraints. Nothing Mara described in her missing person report. The space she claimed existed wasn't a room at all. Just a shallow dirt crawl space, barely large enough for one person to kneel inside. Authorities blamed stress, grief, even hallucination, anything except the possibility that Mara had actually been led to the same place Daniel was taken from. But what they did find chilled every officer on site. Mara's flashlight, left switched on, its beam pointed straight into the soil, as though she dropped it mid-step. Footprints in the dust showed she entered, but none showed her coming back out. By sunrise, the search expanded into the woods, helicopters sweeping through Elridge, but there was never another trace of her, just like there was never another trace of Daniel. Locals still refuse to go near the old mill after dark. Some swear the land itself feels wrong, as if something beneath the ground listens when you speak. And every now and then, hikers claim they've heard a faint recording echoing through the trees, static heavy breathing, and a quiet voice whispering a single name, Mara. And that's where this case still stands today. 2 disappearances 12 years apart, both circling back to Elridge, and a tape that should have never been played.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.